Good evening, and thank you for joining us to tonight's school board meeting. Mr. Romano, roll call.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Present.
Mr. Rudy.
Present.
Mr. Schaff.
Present.
Mrs. Delaney.
Present.
Mr. Chumley.
Present.
All present.
First on our agenda is executive session. We do have the need to go in. So I'd like to recommend that we withdraw to executive session for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, compensation of, or investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee, and ask for a second.
Second.
Mr. Schaff. Any discussion needed? Roll call.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Yes.
Mr. Schaff.
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney.
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
5 yes.
Thank you. We will be withdrawing into executive session and rejoining public session at 7 o'clock. withdraw us from executive session.
Sure, roll call, Mrs. Brinkman,
Present.
Mr. Rudy,
Present.
Mr. Schaff,
Present.
Mrs. Delaney,
Present.
Mr. Chumley.
Present.
5 present.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. All right, first on the agenda is recognition of the West Clermont High School staff.
So this evening, we are glad to welcome back our students from West Clermont High School who, for the 3rd year in a row, have received the National Gallery of Excellence Award by the Walsworth Publishing Company for our school yearbook. And their advisor is Matt Curlis, who is not here with us tonight, so we want to definitely recognize his efforts. But we want to highlight, because he said the most important people are the students anyway. So tonight we have editor Caleb Clark, business manager Piper Bolin, associate editor Morgan Meyer, and marketing director Mackenzie Meyer. So for all of you who are here, come up forward. I know that I think at least one of the people is away at college and so not available. So tell us your names, and Mr. Overby will give you your certificate.
My name is Piper Bolin. I'm the business manager of the yearbook.
And I'm Caleb Clark, and I'm
So we are very proud of your efforts. It is an amazing, amazing yearbook, and just great memories for our students at the high school to be able to cherish for forever. And is there anything you guys want to say about your experience? Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot, so you don't have to unless you'd like. But if there's anything you'd like to share, we would be happy to hear it.
Honestly, we were in it for 2 years, and one of the years was during COVID, and so that was a challenge, definitely, but we still won an award for that year, and we pushed our limits even further this year, and we managed to do it again, and I'm just proud of our staff and all that we accomplished, because it was definitely difficult with online and all that, but we accomplished it, and I'm really proud of us, and it was a great year.
You did. And how many pages is this yearbook? Do you remember? Like, it's huge.
it's close to 300.
Yeah, it's a huge yearbook, and this is one of the top awards that you can get with high school yearbooks. And so if everyone will join me in a round of applause for these students.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda?
And we're a little bit ahead here because we are coming up for this ceremony will be actually October 14th. But today we're going to go ahead and in advance recognize Tiffany McLeese. She is our child nutrition coordinator, and she is being honored this year by Child Focus with the Encourage the Heart Award for health and meeting the nourishment needs and the basic needs of our students. And what is really, Tiffany is up here, I think, every year for some kind of recognition that she is getting. She is certainly a star player here in West Clermont. She was amazing with her team during COVID, as you all know, having to arrange packing bags, running the drive-thrus where you could come in and pick up your food. And then she became even more creative with her efforts this past summer by looking at all the federal guidelines, jumping through hoops, and then turning that process into like a click of a button, where families could sign up and have food delivered to their homes. And so her innovation, her heart for kids, and all of her creativity that she uses as she leads our child nutrition department is second to none. And she's also now, we recognize her for this earlier, I think it was last spring, I don't know, all the days run together. She is the president of her association here in Ohio, right? And so we certainly just would like you all to join us in recognizing Tiffany McLeese for her efforts to take care of our students, their tummies and their hearts. And we will be celebrating Tiffany as a team on October 14th at Holiday Inn Eastgate during Child Focus's special occasion. So we look forward to celebrating her yet again publicly.
She makes us very proud. Good job. Next on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. We've been given that agenda late last week, and we've all had opportunity to review it. And I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the agenda as presented and ask for a second.
Second.
Mr. Chumley, discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mr. Schaff,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney.
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved. Public commentary, we do have 3 business cards tonight. When you're called, please step to the microphone, state your name and address, limit your comments to 3 minutes, and remember that we can't speak about employees or situations, and it's not a two-way discussion, it's a one-way. We'll listen, and if there's any follow-up, the superintendent will follow up. First, we have Rick DiPuccio.
Hello, everybody. My name's Rick DiPucci. I live at 4009 Shady Lane Drive, Cincinnati 45245. I have 3 kids in this district. I've never been to one of these meetings because I'm a firm believer. Everyone up here is an elected official. Do your job. Do what's right. You won't hear from me. Well, I'm here. I'm not happy. Frankly, I'm pretty pissed off along with a bunch of other parents. It's all about the COVID quarantine and the guidelines that you guys have adopted. I know it's always 4th and 10, it's time to punt. Well, that's what the Ohio Department of Health said. So I did my own research. I went and I looked. It says that the Ohio Department guidelines state if you're unvaccinated and unmasked that you should be quarantined if you're exposed. The key word there is should. Not must, not mandated, not you have to. It is you should be quarantined. So what you guys are doing and the policies that you guys have put forward, you're quarantining perfectly healthy kids. To go home, my 16-year-old got quarantined 2nd day of school. He went to work every day. My daughter, 6th grade, been quarantined twice now. The first day, she was, quote, exposed, whatever that means, no one could tell me when or how, on a Monday. We were told Thursday. All right, second time she was exposed on a Tuesday. We were emailed Sunday night. It went to a spam or junk folder. We didn't know. She went to school Monday. Nobody even knew. No big deal. She went to school Tuesday. Her belly didn't feel good. She went to the nurse. They said, well, you shouldn't even be here. So we ran her to the doctor, got tested, negative. Did all the proper paperwork to get her back in the school next day. A communication breakdown. We send her to school, and the school calls and says, well, she can't be here. So you guys and your system's failing these kids on quarantining perfectly healthy kids. And I asked that day, I said, well, where's she at now? She's negative. She's a negative test. Oh, she's with all the other kids that we don't know if are positive or negative. That makes a lot of sense. You guys decided to shut down the middle school between on a Friday and a Monday. No clue why, don't make any sense. I don't agree or disagree. To me, it was stupid. Guess what? Friday night, all the kids were at? They were at the high school game. All the middle school kids were at the high school game.
30 seconds, please.
I'll get there.
Thank you.
My whole thing is common sense is not being used on this board. You guys need to adopt a better policy, come up with better solutions so our kids can get an education and not be quarantined at home. Thank you. You guys have a great night.
Thank you. Christina Engel. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Christina Engel, 4144 Greenfield. Thank you, board members and administration. I am here tonight as a reminder of the many parents in your school district who are waiting for you to finally adapt and act for the protection of our children. We are still waiting for mask mandates, at least for the grade levels that still do not have the option to vaccinate. I spent the time since the previous board meeting attempting to get answers, in particular from Ms. Brinkman, who had made a statement during the meeting that I felt needed clarification. To provide context, Mr. Sheff had reiterated his support for mask mandates, but acknowledged that we are a data-driven district, to which Ms. Brinkman said, I looked at that earlier today. The numbers of those that are masking are very similar to ours that are not requiring it. In emails, I asked what data was being used, and I received no answer. But much to the credit of Ms. Adams, she did attempt to provide information, but again, I wanted to know what was going into the thinking behind that particular statement. I am here to make my own statement, and I will provide my data. If in-person learning is your goal, optional masking is not a successful path to achieving it. Of the 5 local schools that Mrs. Adams and I could come up with who have already had to close or switch to remote learning, Lebanon, Carlisle, Goshen, Bethel, and us, all 5 had optional masking policies. This is not just a non-COVID staffing issue, this is a pattern. We find the over 255 confirmed positive cases that you've given notice about in about a month's time to be unacceptable. This doesn't include the hundreds more students missing school due to lengthy quarantines. If you're not too much of a conspiracy theorist, perhaps you'll take into consideration the fact that the CDC now reports that schools without mask requirements are 3.5 times more likely to have COVID outbreaks. If you're part of the group that likes to rally behind whoever shows up in scrubs, perhaps you'll listen to the Cincinnati Children's Hospital, who stated that masking was, quote, a no-brainer, quote, we know that masks are safe, and that now research shows that universal masking in schools significantly lowers chances of students catching COVID. The numbers of firsthand positive cases are not easing. The explosion of cases in Holly Hill seems to reflect school spread. As the weather becomes more inclement, students will be indoors even more, and the research is in. We need you to adapt and institute temporary mask mandates, at least for those who are vulnerable without the opportunity to vaccinate. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. John McGraw, trustee. And going forward, Mrs. Adams, can we add him to the agenda ongoing so that he can give us an update as to what's going on in the trustee world and how it relates and impacts the district, please? Thank you. Mr. McGraw.
Thank you very much. I'm John McGraw, Union Township trustee, and I appreciate that. I'll still try to be very brief and just give you some information just to keep everybody in the community updated. First of all, we love our partnership with West Clermont, but really there's a lot of other school districts in Union Township, and we try to partner with all the school districts, and so we're happy to do that with Batavia or Milford or CNE or even Forest Hills. So we're glad to, anytime a situation comes up with economic development, to work with all the local school boards. It just so happens that West Clermont's the biggest one in Union Township and has the most residents. So because of that, there's more activity. But I did want to mention, we just recently approved payments for the second half TIF payments, and for West Clermont Local School District, it was over $1.2 million in our second half payment. So that's, you can almost double that for the whole year payment. So I just want to show you where the TIFs are going and how those distributions go. And then that's money that goes to the district, and you can decide how you need to spend it. But I also wanted to give you some more information on the former Glen Estee property. A lot of people ask about that. Just so you know, the activity there, first of all, the township paid to have the old school torn down, with the exception of part of the old high school is now part of Child Focus. They bought the building, and they're still operating there. So I'm glad to see that part of the building lives on and is serving a good purpose. The entire property is actually under contract, which means developer is actively trying to sell and attract developments. So I think things will be happening very quickly. But currently, we have the first project, Provision Living, is basically finished with their first phase, and the projected revenues will be coming in starting next year. So this is based on our estimates, and of course, the auditor has the final say on valuations. But the gross tax for that property is going to be over $719,000, and there's a reduction factor that takes part of that back. But in essence, they're going to be paying over $500,000 in taxes, and that's a TIF property. That means this money is part of the Glen Estee property. That money will be going directly to West Clermont towards the payment of the, you can use that towards your high school bond payments. So I just want to point that out. So starting next year, you'll see that money coming in. And that'll be going on. Now, they've also have come to us at our last meeting and brought forth another project. They're going to build more villas, which last time I checked, no kids move into villas. These are older people, so it's not going to have an impact as far as enrollment goes, but it'll certainly be a really nice project. And this project's going to be, we estimate, over $50 million. That's a conservative number. I think it's going to be a lot higher by the time it's done. It's also going to include some market rate apartments, which actually will be kind of high rent district, to be quite honest with you. So the gross tax on that's going to be $1.8 million when it's finished. So the effective tax rate will be 1.3 million or so. So that means once that project is fully built out, that over $1.2 million in addition to the other money I mentioned will be coming to the district. So as these projects move along, our agreement was the first $2 million on the Glen Estee property would go directly to West Clermont and to pay for the new high school. So once we reach that $2 million threshold, so that's only 2 projects on the Glen Estee property, and the rest of the property still needs to be developed. Once we start developing other parts of Glen Estee, you'll still get money from that too. You'll get your normal rate as that money comes in as well. So on top of the money going just for the high school, eventually you'll see revenue coming in that'll also go towards the entire district. So I think that's really good news, because a lot of people assume that all the development on Glen Estee would only pay for the new high school, and it's not going to be true. It's going to be a lot more than that. So things look very good, and as more projects come along, I'll report back and give you that information. But I just want, these are numbers that we estimate. The auditor has the final say on the values of these properties, and that could vary based on what the county auditor says. But I'm trying to give you information about as factual as I can at this point. So
Thank you.
just to help out, and so you know where the money's coming from, how it works. A lot of people have questions about the whole former Glen Estee property, and I just want to bring some light to that. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's certainly good news. All right, moving on, consent agenda.
Good evening, members of the board, Mrs. Adams, Mr. Romano. In front of you is the personnel agenda for September 27th, 2021. On the agenda today, we have the retirement of 2 teachers at the end of this school year. Barb Gaybauer has been with us for 26 years, and John Hatfield has been with us for 28 and a half years, so we wish them well. We also have the resignations of 2 full-time paraprofessional aides, 2 part-time paraprofessional aides, and 1 secretary. We also have the proposed hiring of 1 special education teacher, 1 custodian, 1 full-time paraprofessional aide, 1 computer technician, and 1 cafeteria worker. Included in this agenda is the proposed hiring of 7 part-time paraprofessional aides, and the next 3 or 4 pages I'm excited to talk about is the salary adjustment for our teachers. They have gone back, 38 of our teachers have gone back and earned a higher level degree to hone their craft and to be able to come back and provide exceptional educational services to our students. So we're really excited about moving them up as they continue to grow professionally. We also have moving a 3-hour cafe employee to a 5.5-hour cafe employee. We also have the proposed hiring of multiple teacher leader supplementals, multiple extracurricular and clubs positions, and multiple coaching positions. This agenda also includes the requested unpaid leave of absence, the hiring of multiple substitutes and school volunteers and student teachers. And finally, we have the proposed stipend approval list for CPI trainings and marching band support. So this concludes my review of the personnel agenda submission for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the approval of bus routes.
Good evening. I'd like to, I'm here to have you approve the bus routes for this year. I believe historically we're a little late on this. The reason is, first year back from COVID, Corey and Peterman ran into a bunch of issues that they had to sort through. Many of them were daily, but Corey worked hard, as did his router and the bus drivers, and they got them resolved. Ended up adding 2 bus routes to help elementary release times, ease that. So We firmly believe these are the bus routes, and I'm here tonight to ask you to approve them. Thank you.
Thank you. Approval of minutes?
Item 7, I'll be going over item 7.03 through 7.12. Item 7.03 is the approval of the minutes for August 30th, 2021, so it's recommended to approve the August 30 minutes as presented. Item 7.04 is a second approval of minutes. That is for the minutes of September 13th, 2021. Recommendation to approve those, the September 13 minutes as presented. Item 7.05, as school starts, thankfully we have donations from community people coming back to the district. The 3 listed there, it's recommended to approve donations as presented. They are from Mercy Health, donated school supplies to Holly Hill Elementary for student and classroom use. Solid Rock Church donated school supplies to Withamsville Tabasco Elementary for student and teacher use in the classroom. Item 3 is Crossroad Eastgate donated 10 book bags full of school supplies for students at Withamsville Tabasco Elementary. Recommendation then would be to approve those donations as presented. Item 7.06 is resolution authorizing the treasurer to seek application for local institutions for the district depository agreements. The district depository agreements is another phrase for our checking account and our banking business that we do. I will read the title of the recommended action, but know that this is about a 3-month process where we will go out, we'll advertise, but we'll also identify those financial institutions that are within the boundaries of the district. We will invite them to submit a proposal to us for a checking account, also to be eligible institutions for investments. You'll notice some language in the title where it says that we do not award for inactive funds. Basically, the money will either go into an active account, which is a checking account, or interim, which would be an investment account to do that. So the recommended action is request approval of the resolution providing for the receipt of applications from eligible institutions desiring to serve as depositories of the active and interim monies of the West Clermont Local School District for the period from January 1, 2022 through December 31st, 2026, estimating that no public monies of the district will be awarded as inactive deposits during that period, providing for notice of this resolution and the receipt of application to be given, and establishing the date for the designation of depositories. I forgot to mention up front that that would be for a 5-year period that we do that. That was item 7.06. Item 7.07 is authorization to enter into an agreement for government 403B and 457B. This is really for the provider. We are moving from one third-party administrator to another. We feel this is better operating procedures internally for us, and additionally providing better service to our employees who choose to have a salary reduction agreement. The recommended action is recommendation to approve the resolution authorizing entering into an agreement for governmental 403B and 457 deferred compensation plan administrative services as presented. The company is TSA Consulting Group. Item 7.08 is authorization to approve a 403B and 457 provider. From time to time, we do amend our approved list. Those are new eligible 403B and 457 providers of those instruments, so of a 403B account, 457 account. The recommended action would be to approve the resolution to add a new 403B and 457 provider for employee salary reduction agreements. The 403B is Octavia Wealth Advisors, and the 457 is for Fidelity. Item 7.09 is authorization to approve purpose and budget statements for FY22. It is by policy and by regulation that funds out at the school buildings, those are 009, our Uniform School Supply Fund. That's the fund where we assess fees to the students and in turn purchase classroom supplies and materials within the schools and within the classroom. The 018 account, which is the school building principal fund, which is for general fundraisers for the school, and then that money to be spent on different activities that the principal deems necessary within that school. The 200 funds are the student-led activity accounts, student-managed activity accounts, so where there's clubs and organizations, where the students guide that. Those are the 200 funds. And then 300 funds are the administratively managed student activity accounts, like the band and the athletic funds that are there. The recommended action is recommendation to approve the resolution for purpose and budget statements for school building, student and administratively managed funds, principal funds, and uniform school supply funds. One important note with that is why it's important to do it. Not only does it provide the budget for those individual funds, but as the sponsors, the advisors, the principals identify on that budget statement the types of things they're going to expend, as the board approves that, those become a public purpose. So that it is truly important that we do that. Item 7.10 is contracts, and the recommended action is to approve the resolution authorizing the superintendent and treasurer to execute agreements for the district. There are 4 listed, 3 of them to Forward Edge. First one is managing cybersecurity solutions for the 21-22 school year. Second is cybersecurity risk assessment for the 21-22 school year. Third to Forward Edge is the E-rate and non-E-rate managed services for the 21-22 school years. And the fourth one is campus suites, website design, build and launch for the, should say 21 through 24 fiscal years. And my compliments to both Mr. Ryle and Mr. Parise, because they've been using they've used our master service agreement, which basically tells the vendors, here's our rules and regulations to go by when we contract with you, and then if you have an issue with any of that language or terms, come back to us. And it's a great tool that I'm glad to see that the district is beginning to use with that. Items 7.12 is recommended approval for the financial statements, the bills paid, and investment for August of 2021. And I think I got through all those.
Did we skip 7-11?
Yeah, 7-11, that's what I was just looking
7-11,
at.
did I miss something?
The high
Oh,
cooperative.
I'm
purchasing.
sorry. Item 7.11 is authorization to participate in the Ohio Cooperative Purchasing Program. This is a purchasing co-op. What this in essence allows us to do, any department head who is purchasing supplies, materials, equipment, services, we basically can go on to the administrative services website of Ohio and actually use the terms and conditions or that bidding process that they already went through to identify actually the low quote, low bid provider. We can actually use that as a low quote, and if we need to seek an alternative, we can do that. But it does allow the superintendent and myself to directly purchase with vendors that have gone through that bid process with the state. The cost of that, which is, I don't think that cost has changed in 2 decades, is $100 per school district, maybe a little bit more for some other governmental entities, but it's a great price for us. So the recommended action of 7.11 is request and recommend the board approve the resolution authorizing West Clermont local school districts' participation in the state of Ohio purchasing co-op. Thanks for noting that.
All right. You've heard the recommendations given to us for consideration. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Delaney in a second.
Second.
Mr. Chumley, discussion?
On the donations, at least either update the agenda or at least have in the minutes that says Holly Hill Elementary instead of just Holly Elementary. The version I'm looking at says Holly Elementary,
Oh,
just typo.
thanks.
Substantive, I do not have any questions.
On the personnel agenda, I wanted to mention one of our retirees was a graduate of Glen Estee High School. So thank him for coming back to his grassroots and finishing his career with us. We like that. Anything else? Roll call.
Okay. Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes,
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mr. Schaff.
Yes.
5 yes.
motion approved. Superintendent's business.
Yes, Mr. Overby is going to come with his team to give an operational update on several items. So, welcome, Mr. Overby.
So I'm very excited to be here tonight to present with our team around 4 topics. One being the Mercy Healthplex, an update that is probably overdue. It's been a couple years since Mike and team have presented to us tonight, or to you tonight. And then it'll follow by Chuck LaFata giving an operations update, and then Larry Priest giving a technology, and then I will give a data infrastructure plus some contact tracing update. So at this time, I'd like to bring up Mike Combs and Terry, oh my gosh, Terry Pierce. Name is escaping me, I apologize for that. The mouse is a little tricky sometimes, so you just hit that arrow moving forward, and I do apologize. That's all right.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to give an update on the health plexes. We were fortunate enough 5 years ago, Midtown Health, we've recently been acquired by Health Fitness, which is also out of Chicago. Midtown Health was out of Chicago. But we were fortunate enough and honored to be contracted to run the Mercy Health Plexes, West Clermont Healthplex, Mercy Healthplex. And so we wanted to give you an update tonight. And when I think back to the vision of what the Healthplex was going to be, we talked about, of course, we're going to serve the students, but we also wanted to serve the community. That was a real vision that the board had and also the administration. So Terry's going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so one of the things is, right now, we're servicing 1,450 members. Pre-COVID, in March of 2020, we had 2,670 members. So we're starting to work back on that, getting the members back in. We've taught over 3,000 children swim lessons in the community and for the members, and we still have swim lessons every single month with private, semi-private, and group lessons. And then for summer camps, since 2017, we've serviced over 100 families. In 2021, we did 65 families. And then we do special events. We do, like, for the community, and we invite the community. We do an Easter egg hunt. We do movie night in the pool. We do birthday parties and lifeguard and CPR classes. And then currently, we have a couple teams in the community that are coming in and using our space, which are the Cincinnati Marlins and the Cincinnati Synchrogators.
And of course, our main mission is to serve the school district, West Clermont School District. So first and foremost, you know, we want to to run this in a financially responsible manner. And so we work closely with Dan and Mike. And so in 2019, pre-pandemic, we had a profit of $171,000 that went to the school district, which we were very proud of. Unfortunately, the pandemic last year was a rough year, but we're glad to say that we have rebounded from the pandemic, and after the first 8 months of this year, we have earned a profit of $47K, which we're very proud of to rebound from the pandemic. We've collaborated with Dan and Paula and are helping to partner and collaborate in running the employee wellness program for the school district, which we're love doing and very proud of. We're delivering small group personal training classes. We have monthly nutritional seminar that we provide. It's really neat. We also, Midtown Health has a virtual program that we developed during the pandemic, and we were able to take about 40 or 50 classes online that are delivered each week on the Empower platform. Right now, we're at 37% of the employees have participated thus far. We've been told by Dan that the goal is 100%, so we got a ways to go. And that 100% is participated anyway, you know, with the wellness program. We just want to improve people's well-being, and we're going to continue to work and collaborate to play an even bigger role with that. Over the years, we've provided many job opportunities for West Clermont high school students, which we've been proud of. And this summer was really neat with the summer school program. We partnered with Mike Overby and others, and we provided a half-day camp for students that were in the morning enrolled for the summer school, and then they got to come and participate in activities in the afternoon, so it was really cool. And then also, we really pride ourselves on providing best practices, and Terry's going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so one of the best practices that we did for summer camp this year, which was really nice compared to other years, is the ratio for our Job and Family Services, 1 staff for every 18 campers. But I felt like we had so many kids coming in, so I did 1 staff for every 12. And then in June, in the afternoon, when the kids from summer camp came in, I had 1.5 for every 12. And then when they swam, this year I changed and I added a lifeguard, so that we had a lifeguard in there with the kids too. So there were 2 camp staff for every camp members of 12. And then another best practice we do is we sent out a survey through SurveyMonkey. We did that in September. And we got the results back last week, and we were really proud because one of the questions I asked was, did your child enjoy summer camp? And 91% said yes. And would you recommend this to a friend? And 86% said yes. So we were really proud with those results because year after year with the 100 families, they continue to come back each year until they outgrow camp. Yeah.
One of the next point there is pivoting from the pandemic, and it's been really tough in the industry to pivot. And so we've had to really, unfortunately, as our membership has declined because of the pandemic, although it's growing back, we've had to create efficiencies. And so it was interesting, right now we're at 63% of pre-COVID memberships. Interestingly, the industry is averaging between 55 and 65%. So we're at the higher end of that compared to the industry, so we're proud of that. And right now, at peak, we were offering 78 group exercise classes. Right now, we're offering about 63% of those, or 49, in line with the number of memberships that we've offered. Also, our staffing is something that we've had to reduce to run efficiently, and that's always hard to do. But we're trying to keep our service standards up, but at the same time be able to run in a financially sustainable manner. And you can see there, as far as classes, the industry generally talks about having 8 participants per class. We've lowered that because of the pandemic, so to 5 per class. But really, if we're not doing more than 5 per class, unfortunately, we have to let that class go after we give it a chance to build up, just because otherwise once again, it's not financially sustainable to run, and we want to run in a financially sustainable manner. Now, as we're growing, we had a great last couple months of sales, which is great, and low attrition. We're looking to expand hours and classes and surveys as the membership increases. Then lastly, I do want to give a couple numbers. We do a daily survey. It's called Medallia. You've probably gotten them from a lot of different, Nordstrom's uses them, other industries uses these surveys. They're a daily survey that goes out to random members each day. And right now, for our friendliness of staff, we're averaging a 9.5 out of 10. And for cleanliness, we're averaging a 9.3 out of 10. And we're ranked in this Medallia survey with other clubs around the nation. There used to be over 600, but post-COVID, it's 547. In staff friendliness, we ranked 44th out of 547. And on likeliness to continue, we ranked 135 out of 547. So those are both top quartile scores. So keeping with the theme of operational excellence, we strive to do that every day to run not only for the school, but also for the entire West Clermont community. So thanks for the opportunity to present that.
Do you have any questions for Mike and Terry?
With the Helplex, there was, we also had doctor's facilities there, and last I heard that they moved out, or is that, no, they're.
It's 2 days a week,
They're
right?
there on
Okay.
Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay.
They are leaving. I talked to Sherry, the office manager, but then they're bringing in another group in. It's going to be there Monday through Friday.
Excellent,
It's another, one of their departments is going
Right.
to come in. So we'll still have services there.
excellent, very good, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions?
No,
I
thank you.
I do have a quick question. Will you be doing any community-facing sales type of meet and greets that people can, come and get information? Because I remember during the initial year, the staff was at like Friday night football games or basketball games, and because truly are a lot of people in the community that don't realize that the Healthplex is there. and that they have access to it. They just think that it, you know, that's just part of the school. So that might be,
I think that's a great idea. I think that's an opportunity. And you're right, we were doing that a lot early on, and obviously with the pandemic, that fell off. But I think we need to get that going again.
And we just hired a new membership rep, Elaine Sherman's been with us for 8 years. She's now taking on that role. She grew up in this area, she knows everyone, and she wants to get out in the community. So she's gonna go, like, I was one of the ones that would stand at the basketball. So Elaine's gonna work with me, and we're gonna go to the football games, the basketball games. And I often said we would also volunteer if they need volunteers at the gates. And we can do different things, you know, and then pass out passes as we go along. We had a lot of high school students that would go out in the neighborhoods and pass out door hangers. We still have a bunch of those left. So if any students you know that need any hours, my daughter was at Milford, so her and her friends would come over and I'd give them hours and they'd scour all the neighborhoods, so we can do that as well. So now that we have a lane, it'll be a lot easier to get back out in the community.
But I think it's a great point. That's something
Yeah.
we need to hit on again, because we need to start growing back that membership.
yeah, I happened to talk to my next door neighbor, who they're a young family, and they have a high school student this year, and they didn't even realize that they could join the Healthplex.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think we have a lot of that in our district now, because we have a whole new group of parents coming through
Right.
now, so.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple of things. One with the summer camps, that was scaled in like a month. So to come from an idea to actually putting it in play, literally it was a month or 6 weeks of work. So I appreciate Terry and Mike and our teams for doing that. Plus, we're in constant communication with them. We meet monthly, Dan, myself, Chuck, some sort of combination, at least once a month, sometimes twice a month. And then thank you to the high school with Mr. Gephardt and Mr. Collins, and the coordination that goes into having a health facility on your campus. It takes a lot of coordination, so I do appreciate the work that Randy and James do to make sure that our customers, clients, have a great experience once they're on our campus. So at this point, Mr. LaFata will come up and talk about operations and great things that are happening in that department.
Don't be offended.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you again. First of all, it's been very gratifying for me to take over from Lance in June and work with the team that he put together. The maintenance people, the head custodians, I got to tell you, they're all first class. They're self-starters. They make decisions quickly, effectively, and they want to do the best job they can do for the district. I've seen it firsthand, and I really respect all of them, and it's been a joy working with them. So from our department, some onward and upward investments, we want to, as a department, we want to support the district's initiative and the portrait of a graduate and the student-centered ecosystems. So we have a head custodian meeting this Thursday, actually. We're going to roll this out. And we're going to talk about how our operations department in the future can be more supportive of what the district's initiatives are in teaching and learning and all other initiatives that the district has. To be supportive, to be proactive in our decisions, and kind of be the silent partner. You know, you don't see them, but you see their work that they do. That's going to be our goal. The progress, Lance started all these projects in April and May, and they're finished, with the exception of the first bullet. All summer projects except the middle school roof. They're waiting on trim pieces. It's been frustrating at best. In August, they had labor problems. They didn't have enough guys to work. Now that they got the labor solved, now they're waiting on trim pieces. They worked Saturday and Sunday this past weekend, did a lot. I came out. They actually showed up and worked. It was awesome. This coming weekend, they're supposed to finish. Hopefully, if the trim pieces are in fact in Cincinnati, they'll get them installed and they'll be done. That'll be the last summer project completed. Everything else up there has been done. The roofs on Amelia and Withensville. The middle school interior sprinklers, I want to talk a little bit about that. The whole school building is not sprinkled with interior sprinklers. So every summer, there's an open contract with the company to go as far as they can go in the summer. So within 2 years, probably, we're going to have that whole building effectively sprinkled and up to code. So they did their thing this year. They finished August 1st. The locks have been changed at the middle school now. They eliminated a lot of master keys. I think it's down to 2 now. Office remodel at the middle school is completed. The blacktop repairs in several locations, parking lots, and the painting at the middle school. High school concrete's repaired and sealed. Ferguson and district office projects, construction projects are finished. We built I didn't, but they built a secure tech room for Larry and the Chromebooks to be stored in, and then put in additional countertops to facilitate teaching and learning in the math consultants at Ferguson. And then a short wall in the district office basement to split one large hallway into 2 offices. The challenges I listed there are something I mentioned earlier. Getting parts to finish. Randy's waiting on, the elevator's not operable at the high school. We're waiting on a seal. I was told today it could take up to 5 business days to get that in. So that's the story with many ongoing projects and work orders. It's waiting on supplies to get here. We've had to redistribute several team members over the summer because of COVID and because of quarantine. We filled in quite well, but it's ongoing with some custodians now. And then, again, slow delivery on things like safety with radio batteries, HVAC parts, and so on. It's an ongoing issue. Hopefully, will be solved sometime quickly. I don't hold out hope for that, though. Goals would be a long-term master plan. I've started working on this with HVAC. We met with Terry Helton and I met with DeBraw Kemple. They're going to begin an inventory of all our rooftop units. They've never been inventoried before. We want a data sheet of the oldest to the newest, which ones are likely to be needing repairs and when. So we'll have a plan for that. Roofing, again, Lance did start this. He does have a roofing schedule. I'm going to meet with our contractor in October to refine this, and then asphalt with Houck Asphalt. They're going to give us maintenance schedules for sealing and repair for all parking lots in the district. So hopefully by May, we'll have these master plans in place, and then I could report out to you what that looks like for the district. Thank you. Any questions?
I do. You
Yeah.
mentioned that the high school elevator was out of commission. How are we accommodating students that have mobility issues?
That's a great question, Randy.
Yeah, with Scott and Tracy, and working with those students, and we're moved into the lower media center and student services to provide services for them. So, not the ideal situation, but situation that we're in. That's another. Chuck gets a call from me every morning at 6.
6 a.m.?
It's something we want to get fixed yesterday.
Of course. Thank you.
It's, all kidding aside, it's not good at all. Not good at all. When we knew there was a problem, Randy, I didn't know there was a problem, honestly. Randy called me Friday. And I called, the rep was out there, and there was a weight problem with it. It shifted weight, broke some seals, so now, of course, if you put seals in, you need to replace all the other parts. So we're waiting on those parts. Randy texted me this morning. I called our rep, and that's when she told me 4 to 5 days. I told her that's not acceptable. We'll see. I mean, surely to goodness sake, get seals somewhere quicker than 4 or 5 days because it's a high school elevator. It's not. It really isn't a good situation.
Yeah.
And I appreciate Randy and his team for trying to make it work.
It is a theme throughout operations, though, that supply chain issues are impacting us.
It is.
We have examples almost every week of something that
is.
you
It's
just
real.
expect to be right there, but it's not.
You would think they could go pick up a seal for an elevator, Otis Elevator, that's one of the biggest in the country. No, apparently they can't do that. So we're gonna get it, but it's not good for the high school. Anything else?
When we're talking about repairs and stuff at the high school's only 4 or 5 years old. Are we still within warranty ranges, or is this cost that we're incurring? Is this, what
So
type of?
well, for the elevator, I asked that question on the elevator. So the elevator actually went into service actual officially in service, I think 3.5 years ago, when the warranty clock started ticking. Of course, with this warrant, we still have a warranty, we still have an inspection warranty for it. The company is claiming that the elevator was overloaded repeatedly. The elevator's rated for 2,500 pounds. They say it was overloaded. I asked, I said, is there a sensor on the elevator that shows you that? No, but they said because of the nature of the fault, they know it was tilted to one side, and that means it was overloaded. So at this point, I'm not going to argue with them. We need that thing fixed. But I did contact Ed Dyer, and we're going to try and work through this. What we're actually, they say it was overloaded. I don't know that they can prove it was. I don't know. So those costs, we're going to pay them, but then we're going to go back and start talking about maybe some trade-off here. So
And then
it's a
like
great-
concrete and concrete repairs and other things that, I mean, obviously there's wear, but you know, a lot of concrete shouldn't fail after 4 to 5 years.
The concrete, apparently there's a water problem at the high school percolating up from the ground. So either yesterday or today, our guys were gonna rent a camera that put it down through the pipes from the roof drain down and from the clean outs up. Because it appears that all the water coming off the roof in that spot was not going into the drain it was supposed to go into, because the drain pipe was dry when they poured water down. So it had been percolating up underneath the concrete sidewalk, and you know what happens. Over 3 or 4 years, it destroys it. Still have the problem. So that's why they're gonna do the camera in the drain to find out either the pipe's disconnected or was never connected or is broken. So again, this will be a warranty claim or a claim against the contractor once we get it all sorted out.
Right.
So it's a shame. It's a shame you have that kind of stuff.
What part of the building is that?
It's right outside Randy's office.
Of course it is.
Yeah. Anything else?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Good evening. Thank you for your time this evening. We have a lot of exciting things happening with technology this year. The onward and upward investment plan was in full force when we bought 2,200 new Chromebooks to replace some of those that were begged and borrowed. None were stolen, but they were begged and borrowed from different districts last year to kind of meet the need that was thrust upon us. And thankfully, with some of the funding we received, we were able to pick up some new devices, and we received those in record time. We actually had them by the end of June, which gave our vendor plenty of time to prepare them and gave us plenty of time to deploy them. 390 updated laptops for staff at the middle school and the high school. And some administrators that have 5-year-old plus laptops. We weren't quite so lucky with the monitors and the docking stations for those devices. Supply chain issues have those on hold. We are hoping to have them. I'd hate to give a date because right now it's like a crapshoot, but I'd like to think that we would have them by the end of October so that we can start to deploy those in classrooms. We cannot deploy them to teachers without those docks so that we can connect them to the rest of the classroom technology appropriately. Start of the year, so there's been a lot of progress, but a lot of it's been kind of behind the scenes. Some of it's been a little bit up front. Student devices were deployed before or during the first week of school. We were fortunate enough to have the devices early, as I said, so we got out the week before school started with the enrollment lists that we had at that time and started deploying devices to elementary school classrooms. And then right there at the beginning of school, we got the 9th graders' devices delivered to them. We have improved our logon security for all of our Google accounts using multi-factor authentication. It's affectionately known as MFA. That allows users to log in a more secure way because it requires something you have, something you know, or something you are. Something that you know is like your username and password, but something you have is a little key or your cell phone or what have you. I know the board has been through that process. in our last meeting. All of our users have now completed that process, and we are finishing off the last few service accounts that we have. Some organizations like our PTO members that use a district-issued email, we're working through where they might have 3 board members that use the same email to represent a school. So we're working through that with them now. We've enhanced security at the district's network edge in a firewall that we deployed last year. It replaced an aging content filter that allowed us to prioritize traffic and make sure we could boost the really important academic traffic like testing and those kinds of things, and deprioritize some of the other things during testing weeks and all, Netflix or what have you. So that device had multifunction capability, and we bought it at the time for that reason. This year we implemented that extra capability, so we've increased our security at the edge. We will be deploying with the contract that was approved tonight. We'll be deploying internal penetration testing against our internal servers and systems. So we will have a device that sits inside of our network and intentionally tries to find where it can find holes and see where it can compromise the security that we have in place on our many servers. The elevated security for servers and workstations, EDR, that's endpoint detection and response. We're changing out our antivirus and anti-malware software. The new software has a security operations center where there's an individual sitting behind a screen watching for alerts that might come in. For some very critical systems like our servers and certain workers in the district, it's a 24/7, 365 service. And for the rest, it is a 8x5 service 5 days a week. That makes a lot of sense when you think of the number of desktops that we still have in the district where there's nobody behind them 24/7. So they still get antivirus, anti-malware detection. There's just not someone watching the screen outside of normal business hours. We have enhanced our protections for data backups. So as of last week, a new backup system has gone in place that creates an air gap. That is something for anyone in the industry that knows, as you get these encryption viruses, they will not only encrypt your live data, but they'll encrypt your backups as well. And then you either pay them for the key or you start over. So putting in an air gap makes those backups unavailable. Once they're written, they become unavailable until you need them, and then they become available. So even if you're infected, they cannot be compromised. We've internalized our control of remote access to district resources. So our virtual private network, we have always had that as part of our internet provider. They've provided that. It's been great to have that outside resource where folks can connect from the outside, connect to that firewall that they have, but then traffic would run in the clear from that point back to our network. So while we trust our partners, we trust but verify. So with the same firewall, we were able to implement a VPN all the way back to our edge. So now when a user connects from the internet, they're connecting in an encrypted tunnel all the way back to our outside face, and it's secure all the way through. Dark web scans. So again, as part of the contract that we passed tonight, there will be scans on the dark web for any account that has westclair.org or my.westclair.org in it. And any credentials found on the dark web, they'll be reported to us immediately, and then we can take action. Did you advance for me? Thank you. Challenges. There you go. So challenges, as we said, supply chain's been a challenge. We've had equipment shortages in laptop docks and monitors. So it's impacted the teacher laptop refresh program. We have tablets on order for special education. I understand those have now shipped, and they are actually in transit on trucks now. So we have a number of iPads that will be coming in, and we will get those deployed out to the special education units just as quickly as we can. We have a small project for video surveillance out at the athletic complex that's been waiting on cameras. Those are back ordered now at least until late October, and it could be after that. It's sort of a up in the air kind of question right now. One of our challenges obviously was the student information system that was migrated over the summer. There are a number of systems that the district relies on for academic tools that are fed from that system, and so with that changeover, the data mapping isn't always nice and pretty and clean like we hope it will be. So we've had team members working with Mr. Stahl, with Mr. Overby through that process to try to make sure that we keep all of our systems fed with the information they require. The shorter summer school did impact us a bit. We were able to work around it to a great degree, but every building had some instance of summer school where we couldn't just sweep through like we would normally, so it caused a little bit of a dance at the start of school. And then, of course, we had prepared to have equipment on time, because as the summer wore on, we were told we would have equipment on time. And then in August, when the equipment did not come on time, we had to put a bunch of equipment back that we had already taken out, waiting for the new stuff. So reworking did cause us a little bit of trouble due to equipment shortage. So our goals and targets for the rest of the year. We want to get the teacher laptops deployed as soon as we can get those docks and monitors. That's critical. Teachers are now working with 5.5, 6.5-year-old devices, which is a pretty long time for a production device in a professional setting. We want to elevate our messaging on hotspot availability. We were able, due to the Broadband Ohio Connectivity Grant last year, to buy hotspots and make them available to our families that do not have internet in their home. We have a limited adoption of that program so far, not nearly the number of folks have come out as we expected would, but we believe by elevating our messaging, we'll be able to serve more students. We want to further enhance the security of our public-facing servers, so we do have some servers that are accessible from the internet, as most organizations do. Using that same firewall technology, we will create a walled garden kind of technique that will allow those devices to be available to the internet, but not have free-flowing access back to our other servers that don't need that outside access, which will enhance our security even further. We want to develop courses of action based on penetration testing. So basically what we learn there, we're going to fix. We will be conducting periodic phishing campaigns to increase user awareness. So we're basically going to send out emails to all of our user base. We'll let everyone know, hey, we're going to be doing this, so be on your guard, which will raise awareness to begin with and make them a little more cautious to begin with, which is a good thing. And then we'll send that phishing out, and then we'll get reports back on, who clicked the wrong link and everything, and we can kind of send them something and say, hey, just so you know, you might want to watch out for this or that. These are the things that might tip you off that this is, not exactly what you think it might be. And then we'll review and refresh our cyber incident response plans and our building incident response teams. So that is all that we've been doing. Question?
So with hotspots, did people who were issued hotspots last year turn those in, or do they keep them for subsequent?
They kept them right through the summer, and
Okay.
they're using them again this year.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. That's been a great partnership with Remote edX Connectivity Champions. They do all of the support, the home support, so the families can, public service announcement, the families can contact Remote edX, and Remote edX will go all the way through getting them the hotspot, helping them get connected at home, get the devices connected at home. If they have a problem using it at any time, they'll give them support from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and if it becomes a hardware issue, they let us know and we swap the hotspot.
Do we know or have the way to know who's using hotspots and who's not?
Yes,
I mean, okay.
there's a console issued by the company. T-Mobile is the provider, and they have a console, and we can look at the data rates that are used. And in fact, if we find that there are some hotspots that aren't getting an adequate level of use, then we're to either petition to have it back or for them to use it more, one or the other. That's kind of part of the arrangement.
And what happens when the student grades out, meaning that they graduate and they had been using that mobile hotspot? Does that get reallocated, or do they keep it there at the house?
No, we request that they return it, and then if they don't, we can disable it, and then we can add it to a student fee or what have you. We haven't had that happen yet, but I can see how that could happen.
Are old monitors and docking stations not compatible with?
Correct. That's correct. The older monitors and docking stations are not generally compatible. We can jump through some hoops with some adapters for the monitors, but the docking stations are all very proprietary for the equipment that we had 5 years ago. One of the advantages of new equipment is the docking stations are all USB-C standard, and so you can change, generally speaking, not always, drivers and whatever, but generally speaking, you can change from Dell to Lenovo to HP, and the USB-C connector is the same. There may be some other quirky incompatibilities, but generally speaking, they're more compatible, which is a benefit we have also with the newer Chromebooks. The chargers are all USB-C. Last year we had like 4 different charger types, and you had to have the right charger, and some of them looked very similar, and they were the same brand even, and now with the USB-C chargers, we've eliminated a lot of that as well.
And last year with COVID, we had issues getting the laptops that you had mentioned, but we didn't have that
Not with
issue
the,
this year with the replacements. Well,
we almost did.
Thanks to Larry.
We almost did. We got word that there was going to be a delay, and we just told them that was unacceptable, that our kids, it was unacceptable. So we ended up getting them. Laptops, the docking stations and monitors, not so much, but we got the laptops with the docking stations and monitors we're still waiting on.
and we're still on schedule with replacements at what, 5th grade and 9th grade? And those happen?
First, fifth, and ninth, all get new, and then they keep them for 4 years. And so first we'll take them through 4th, get a new one in 5th through 8th, and then 9th through 12th. Yeah, and the devices seem to be doing fairly well. Those that are finishing out the 4-year cycle at this point are still holding up. Batteries get a little bit challenged after 4 years, that's for sure.
What kind of wear or damage do we see? I mean, is it? I don't know how, is it, yeah, I was gonna say, is it typical?
The
kid
biggest
usage?
damage we have is screens.
Yeah.
Screens are broken screens are the biggest damage that we have. Next to that might be power ports, you know, where they plug them in, or they, you know, they go to pick them up at home and they're plugged in and they try to walk away, and, you know, those kinds of things. We don't really see, I don't think, malicious damage. I would say in the first couple of years, it seemed that you look at something and think, how did that happen by accident? You know? But I don't think we see nearly as much of that now. I think the stuff that we're seeing is, you know, pretty much honest mistakes.
Are the old laptops and materials, just, do we chuck them, or do we?
We trade them in to our provider. So one of the benefits of the providers that we have is that we ask them to be able to trade those in for value, and it allows us to get a market rate for what they're going for. And we don't have, I mean, it would be very, very difficult to try to dispose of all of these units. So if we go to a public auction site, then you get like nothing for them. You'll get $2 for a laptop or $5 for a laptop. We trade them in, we can get considerably more than that. And then what the reseller community does with them, we don't care. We get a certificate of destruction of data for every serial number that we issue, so that they guarantee that our data doesn't leave their site. And, you know, it's kind of a win-win for us.
If that didn't happen, would we have to clear everything before we got rid of these things?
Well, yeah, so, yes, if we were going to dispose of them, we would either have to destroy the hard drives and eliminate the value of the device by and large. I mean, parts companies would still buy them for scrap, but, or we would have to sell them to an organization. We would have to do a public auction and, you know, disposal of public assets, and then it would be, in that auction, there would be a requirement of data disposal specification.
So that takes a decent job off our hands as well, I guess.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it would take quite a while to go through the 380 or 90 laptops we're about to replace. It would take probably one person 6 months to destroy all that data.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Thank you. Just a few other things of, since March of 2020, to see what Mr. Parise and his team have been able to do with technology, and pretty much go from 4 or 5 grade levels to every single grade level having a device that's less than 4 years old. And it's going to be hard pressed by the end of this year that we have any devices that are over 4 years old in the district that are used on a daily basis. I would also want to remind you too that we had hired an assistant director of technology this year, and that's allowed Larry to spend a lot of time on cybersecurity and cyber safety within the district, which is, if you read it once a week or so, you would read an article of how a school district was attacked or a public entity was attacked, and have Larry's, I would say 25 to 50% of his time focused on that. Makes me feel good and lets me sleep better at night that all those things that he talked about are in place. So appreciate that.
Do we happen to know, in comparison to other districts, where we sit as far as, you know, all students?
Okay, so
and
you asked the question. I have been working with Katrina Biscay from UC. She worked at the Department of Homeland Security for a while, and she advises a lot of other districts. And I basically gave her our roadmap and where we'd like to be at the end of the year. And she looked at me and said, you're going to be beyond 95% of the districts in the state. And if we can get to where I want to be, we it's not a lot of money. It's a lot of work in doing the right things and the right timing and all. So our roadmap was 2 to 3 years. Cyber insurance being what it is, the attacks escalating being what they are, it accelerated our need to move forward.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes.
And then working with Mr. Romano and Larry on that, and making the coordination of the insurance plus the funds and everything else. It's kind of like pay me now or pay me later, and the difference of what it may cost later on to recover things. It's money well spent, and I think in our opinion, So the last piece of our presentation tonight was on data infrastructure, and in the spring, you approved some contracts that will allow us to move this district forward very fast. But so to kind of give you some background here on the onward and upward investments, in teaching and learning, we've added coaches, we've added coordinators and teacher collaboration across the elementaries, especially with the Discover classrooms classes now being offered. That allows our teachers collaboration time. So in that, we're going to take deeper dives on kids, and we want to develop a 360 student view. And you can't do that with paper anymore. There has to be some digital manipulation tools and other things that we're using that allow us to get that global feel of that one student, that cohort of students, maybe a classroom, that grade level, and then across the building, and then finally across the district. So in order to do that, we had to upgrade our backbone, which is our student information system in PowerSchool. So our hope is that PowerSchool SIS becomes that one-stop shop for digital information that we have. And then we added 2 other products, Performance Matters and Unified Insight. And what we're learning is, and learned was that Performance Matters is that small cohort, that individual student on an assessment in Schoology, that individual assessment in Acadience or iReady or MAP or other pieces, and then the cohort piece. And then United Insights will give us the global feel, that a principal can go in with the touch of a button now. They're going to be super excited. We're going to unveil many of these products over the next month. I geek out on it because of the information that you can have at your fingertips. So the idea behind all of this is that we create an assessment solution and an integrated platform. That teacher, that most importantly, that teacher can get that individual view of, or cohort view of, and take, let's say, a Schoology common assessment and compare it to a map or compare it to another assessment to get that information. And like I said, and with Unified Insights, we're going to make data-informed decisions using all of these tools. One of the key pieces of this is all 3 products, and that's where teaching and learning and myself and others have to really be mindful of what tools we're using. They offer an early warning system. So we can set thresholds for attendance, for behavior, for academics, and then we get information that says, it doesn't blink and things, but it gives you that information like, alert, this student may need a little extra help, which I think is and it's uniformed across the building and uniformed across the district. So some of these tools that we'll be talking to our principals about in teaching and learning, we'll be able to speak common language across buildings that this student is exceeding expectations or may need some intervention along the way. Finally, start of the year, we are implementing our new SIS. We implemented the new parent portal and registration process, and we're currently in cleanup of some of that data. Lou Stahl has been working very hard to match what was in Dazzle to match the table sets and data sets that are in PowerSchool. So there's a learning curve to this. That's a challenge. There's a learning curve. And then when it's not your data, and it's hard to replicate live data and get people ready for it. So there's been a steep learning curve. And then we're blending the new SIS with old SIS practices. So an email that I sent out to our principals today was, what reports were you trying to get out of Dazzle, or you got out of Dazzle, that you want to still get out of PowerSchool? So that we have, because every building is unique too, and what some of the birthdays, let's say. Birthday reports. Like, how do we print that birthday report in PowerSchool? Parent portal has been a challenge. We got off to a slow start with that. We learned a lot in a very short period of time of things that we needed to fix. And then notifications. Schoology app has notifications. You probably find this on your phone too, right? Schoology has notifications. PowerSchool has notifications. Remind has notifications. how are we looking at this from a parent experience and saying, okay, how do we coach people on, if you want this information, here's how you do it, and if you don't want this information, you can turn it off. So on the right-hand side, I gave you a portion of a spreadsheet that we created that is bringing all of this information and known problems into one kind of centralized dashboard that many of us have access to. In fact, we talked about it at Cabinet today. And so that we know what the issues are from the administrative assistant, the principal, bless you, from our admin assistants and others, and then who's going to solve that, essentially. Who's going to solve that? And Mr. Stahl and I, we meet weekly. He probably hears me coming down the steps and wants to shut his door, but there's some times that we just need to get some problems solved. So we're working together, and what I like to see is there's a lot of green on there. There's a lot of orange. In the red, there's some reasons why. And some are, we're eliciting extra help there to get that finished. So we're now in that problem-solving mode. So I'm always, when I'm in buildings, I'm talking to other people in the districts. We need to know what the issues are. If you don't tell us the issues, we can't solve them. So we're working through those. And then finally, the goals and targets. From a data systems that were fully operational and accurate with performance matters, we're ending the implementation stage. In fact, we have a elementary teaching and learning meeting on Thursday to unveil performance matters. Because what we want to do is wait till the data that was put into performance matters, we could verify that was accurate, meaning that there weren't any errors in that data. Unified Insights is about 2 or 3 weeks behind. In fact, we have a meeting next week to plan our training. And then we want to provide regularly scheduled and just-in-time training to our staff over the next year so that they can learn this new tool at a very deep level. And then we, from a teaching and learning perspective, we want to make sure that we are refining our MTSS processes. I talked before about developing those early warning systems, indicators, and clearly define on-track and off-track students. Meaning, are they meeting those milestones that we've talked about at teaching and learning, or not? And making sure that we have a great understanding of these kids, of these students, and why or why not they're off track. So lots of work around that. And then kind of summarizing that, we want to know our students well and respond to their needs in a timely and systemic way across the district. And then finally, we've implemented a lot in about 3 months. Everything that Larry talked about, plus everything we're implementing with our data infrastructure. But we're not done. We're not finished. And there's more.
But wait, there's more.
Unified Talent is the HR component of the Power School family. And Dr. Foltz and his team, probably along with Lou and Mr. Romano and others, and myself, will be implementing Unified Talent, hopefully as we get into, believe it or not, hiring season starts around January, February, that we're ready for that transition. And then eCollect is, think Final Forms, but under the Power School umbrella, that parents will be able to log into the parent portal in order to receive that information in there. So we are sending an email to all high school parents who have not completed the registration process tomorrow. Mr. Kirk will be very busy at the high school, along some others that will be supporting him. And then we're going to go each building, or like the middle school would be next, and then the elementaries over time. What we found is that some of our parents need some, and caregivers need some help. They're trying to do this on their phone. They're trying to do this on maybe not the best internet connection, so we're helping as many families as possible through that process. And before I get into some COVID updates, is there anything around data infrastructure? Questions? All right. I do want to say thank you to the teams at the elementaries, middle school, and high school, from principals, admin assistants, teachers. It's been a huge learning curve. Their patience, their understanding, their grace as we work through implementing a whole new backbone to our system in real time. So I appreciate that. A lot. So finally, there has been a modification to our contact tracing process. And in the past, meaning today, we were providing one piece of information to families with their quarantine dates in them. And then after being on a meeting last week with public health and Also, it was part of the Mrs. Adams superintendent's meeting that she attends through Clermont County. It was determined that the quarantine letter itself would be coming from public health. We would be providing it, but it would be on their letterhead, and then they would be providing the dates of quarantine. That is a change, like I said. So Mr. Gould and his team are working through making sure that we're ready for that change. And a reminder that West Clermont does not quarantine. By the order of Ohio Public Health, translating to Clermont Public Health, we are acting as a partner in that process, but we are not excluding and we are not quarantining. It is actually public health who takes that action. So this, in some ways, will clarify who is actually quarantining the students. We are acting in our best, we're doing the best we can of identifying who those close contacts are as timely as possible. And then we will follow up once information is sent from public health.
We are expecting challenges from this change.
Yes.
Like, we think people might lose their mind on this as another wrinkle, another challenge. As you can see as evidenced tonight, there's just still confusion and mistrust about that we are choosing this bank of options versus this is our reality. This is what's expected from the health department through Clermont County to us. And, last school year that was understood and, I don't know, appreciated, respected, or whatever. And this year it's a challenge at every turn. Eric, is there anything you'd want to add to that? I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you have anything to say, here's your moment.
The challenges that I expect that we'll receive, as a school district, we try to provide information to parents as quickly as we can. And by nature of waiting for public health to provide dates, for example, to parents, there's going to be a delay there. And parents are used to having that information right away so that they can plan. Principals and teachers are used to having that information right away so that they can plan. The delay will obviously increase anxiety, and that will be displayed in any number of different ways towards us as we move through the new change. Again, the process of contact tracing is really meant to reduce spread. It's really meant to allow us to continue to stay open. Looking at what happened with Holly Hill this last week that was mentioned earlier, that's an example of why we go through contact tracing. A number of those students did end up turning positive. That prevented yet more students from turning positive. So in the end, the process has allowed us to continue to mitigate and to continue to stay open.
And that's the thing that's frustrating, as you hear parents talk about, you're sending home healthy children. Yes, most of the time we are, and sometimes we aren't. Sometimes it turns positive. And sometimes we've had staff who are positive, who have been vaccinated, and have masks on. It's like you can't make sense of it, because it is, every kind of situation is different and challenging, because you think you're on the right track, and then you learn, okay, we're not. And so we share this tonight to say that there's going to be a communication that's going to go out from our school to let families know about the change. Eric is having a lot of uncomfortable conversations. The principals are having a lot of uncomfortable conversations, thinking that we are making these choices and we are trying to take people down a complicated path. And it's just difficult in the school system situation, because we're just in the middle of it. We're in the middle of that work between health department to families, and we're trying to do our very best every day to take care of them. And this just adds an important step, but it has the tendency to maybe complicate in people's minds because of the information they want to have at the ready. So we're going to start this on Wednesday, is that correct?
We chose Wednesday to have at least 2 days
So that way
to get
people have
this,
time
people used to this.
know the changes and realize, and again, this is something that was communicated to us on Friday to make a change, I would say.
And I have a question regarding that. So we have a great team of people who are monitoring our quarantine students and their return to school. If we're not issuing them their effective date out or their allowed date back, how are we going to be able to monitor when kids are eligible to come back?
We'll get that information from the health department. They'll share it back with us.
They're going to communicate?
but it doesn't really change the job of anybody's here, except for we give out less information. The same amount of load is still,
You know, what I was
here.
thinking is, well, what happens if a student decides, I'm done with this quarantining, I'm going to school? They're gonna
Yeah.
slide back into the classroom,
Yeah.
and is anybody gonna
Well,
notice
and
that
there's
they shouldn't be
certainly
there?
potential for that, as there is now, and we've had to deal with some of those cases. People that are refusing, people are doing whatever they want, but we are doing our best to follow the rules that have been placed before us and to communicate as clearly as we can with parents. And what felt like just a continuation of our processes into this year, felt like, well, we'll just keep doing it with obviously some little extra steps, has been so much more than that, because it's been an argument all along the way, as if we're making this up as we go. And I understand why people feel that way, I really do, because we are as frustrated as they are, but this is our role, this is our responsibility, and so we take it seriously.
And I would say we will wait for public health to tell us when a student could return. So once we place them on the close contact list that we provide, we know that they're a close contact. Public health will have to tell us then when they can return, unless we receive verification of vaccination or verification of they've been positive within the last 90 days. That sort of information we can act upon and then inform public health that we've received that information. Again, it's a balance between how do we continue to provide a rich educational experience while still maintaining our responsibility for public health. And as we make choices about mitigation, whether or not we vaccinate, whether or not we mask, we have to utilize the tools that we have under the guidelines that we have. And those tools and guidelines hopefully will allow us to continue to stay open, which ultimately is better than not being here.
And I want to reiterate too that public health has been highly accessible for us. This is not an us versus them situation. They're doing the best they can, and their staff is stretched and challenged as ours is as well. And it's really just, the more we learn, the more we have to change or get better at what we're doing and things like that. And Julianne is Nesbitt and her team are highly accessible. We asked for a meeting on a Thursday, and I said it was very important so we could report back to the board last time. Literally Friday morning, Julianne was on a call with her whole, like 3 or 4 people on her team. So this is definitely not us versus them. They're learning. They've had their own challenges.
On how they get
on how they get
advised.
information. And
So everything is a reaction, a response to what happens at ODH and ODE. on
right.
down.
And she's a great advocate for us up the chain a little bit, as Natasha and Dan and others are working their advocacy groups as well. So definitely not us versus them. In many ways, like I said, this makes sense because we are not quarantining. We're assisting in the process. It is a public health order that is, during a pandemic, that is quarantining.
There's a, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a pilot program in Warren County, is it, that, do we know the status of that and if there is a potential rollout for other communities to participate, or?
So I didn't share this at the last board meeting, and I should have. Because it was on the news, where Warren County superintendents, working with the health department and ODE, to kind of go out ahead of other school districts and go with a testing strategy, where there's, after so many days, you can test, and there's 2 times you can test to get back into school. So essentially, it's designed to be able to allow people to, with masking, quarantine at school versus at home. And that would be very appealing to people who are just frustrated with healthy kids at home on quarantine. So the governor's office, ODH, the superintendents, all working together just this week. They got trained like in the middle of last week. It's supposed to start sometime this week where they can begin that process. And one of the steps that they had to take was to obtain some funding. And so because they need actual nurses on staff to carry this weight, this load. And so the Warren County Commissioners got into partnership with them and are funding a nurse in every single school district in Warren County to make this happen. So as a
In the
response.
district or every building?
In every district. And as part of that, the Clermont County superintendents, when we learned of this as a possibility, you know, knowing that we wanted that pilot to happen and for it to be small and get started, because the sooner you could learn from it, the better that it can maybe be scaled across the state. We formed a letter as a Clermont County team to ODH, letting them know that we're very interested and would like to be considered if you need more people or whatever it is. And then immediately, Jeff Weir, the ESC director, and superintendent, actually went to the Clermont County commissioners to go ahead and do some legwork to kind of strike that same deal, if you will, if this becomes a thing, that the financial piece of hiring nurses would not be something that would hold Clermont County students and schools back. And so he did do that, and the commissioners were cooperative. So right now, it's all just preliminary work behind the scenes. We'll be watching closely. This pilot, it'll probably be a 6-week thing that we're watching, so it's not gonna be like next week we'll know and then it'll scale, but we wanna do everything in our power to position ourselves to be able to activate, because from talking to other doctors, from Children's Hospital, and just other experts in this area, they say, they're like, just put a mask on, that will solve this, because what you guys are gonna be taking on, this is a heavy lift, this is a challenge for school districts, because we are challenged with that as hospitals. And so it's not like, you know, hit the easy button and then everything just magically starts falling into place. There are certainly challenges, but the whole state is kind of rallying around Warren County to do this early testing and just see where it goes. So we're kind of in the mix of it, no activation, but as I said, trying to set the conditions so that if this becomes a viable solution that will keep kids in school and be effective, then we want to be able to jump on it.
So, and I hesitate to say this because I haven't confirmed this yet, but we have 2 or 3 of our schools that are in Warren County that are in our league. And what I heard on the radio today, and I'll work with Randy and James to confirm, is that they're allowed to come to school. They're still not allowed to participate in extracurriculars.
That's true.
That's
That
true.
is true.
That is true.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's right now for this pilot in particular, it doesn't mean that would be the rule.
Mhm.
It means for this pilot, they're trying to control as many variables as they can. So, just as the research happened last year, like what practices were in the research, in Mason, for instance, last year that happened, didn't end up actually being the new procedures, but it allowed them to learn everything they could so they could recommend what the new procedures could be. So that would probably be likely to happen.
Well, thanks for confirming, because
Yeah.
but it is a question that we would get, is when we play some of our other schools and things.
So bottom line, we're still in a pandemic. The best mitigation efforts we have against spreading and quarantine are masking and vaccinations. And my understanding is students in grades around grade 7 and higher are eligible to get a vaccine. That masking, which is required on busing, would help eliminate some of our quarantines. Granted, even if they're within 3 feet and masked, they would have to quarantine, but that means the person I'm sitting next to. But if they're not masked, now, if I'm within gym now, I might have to quarantine. So and I'm not saying that we need to move to mandatory, because we all know my opinion on this, but as a community, it seems the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and it seems like the loudest voices have been that people don't want a mandatory mask. I get it. But if you don't want your kids quarantined, put a mask on them. We did it last year.
Something has to give.
Right.
Something has to give.
We did it last year, and we had fewer quarantines and fewer positive cases last year. And
Mr. Sheff, we haven't surveyed the students and families to find out the vaccination rates, but just through doing the contact tracing, we're finding that the vaccination rates are quite low still in middle school and high school. And so when that mitigation plus lack of masking happens, you end up with more kids in quarantine. Like it's just what's going to happen, and that's where we are.
And I get people that have, vaccine hesitancy, and I understand, but, and if there's medical conditions, and I get it, but, if my pediatrician tells me that it's safe for my kids, then my kids will get it. And I trust my doctor. People say do your research, but you know what? I'm not a a vaccine or a viral researcher. I don't do that. I trust my doctor who has done the research for me. So I understand, and the gentleman that was in here earlier, we don't interact, but I understand, and I understand the frustration of quarantine. My kids had to quarantine last year. My kids had COVID last year. I had COVID. I had to quarantine. We did all. It's frustrating. I get it.
I get it as well. I have a son that was possibly quarantined, but I can't go home today. It's game day. He's vaccinated with a mask on, so he was not quarantined, but he was in panic mode that I can't leave today. This is not the day to leave. So I get it. We all experience it.
Well, and that's fear and it's trauma in our kids every day, because they're just like, is my name gonna be called? I mean, it's a constant stressor, and we can't pretend that it's just, everything's normal in West Clermont, because it's not. It is not. And just kids dealing with that every day is challenging, staff dealing with it every day. As I did my superintendent articulation meetings over the course of the last couple weeks, I'm not through all the schools yet, but that was kind of the theme of just this, this sense of where you want to be and where you are two different places, and playing who's on first every day is just wearing people down.
Yep. Will you again extend our appreciation to those that are on the team of quarantining and investigating and vaccine collecting and all that? That's not easy.
All of them.
I know it, but it extends beyond just our friends here tonight. I mean, seriously, we understand and appreciate the work that goes into all of it.
Yes.
Thank you for all that you do.
Indeed.
All right.
So next item is Mr. LaFata up again to talk about the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission.
When it rains, it pours.
Good evening. This is my final statement here. This district is nearly finished with the OFCC in the construction phase. So this resolution brought to you by Natasha we have to get back on our list for future studies, for long-term planning, demographics, population control, population movements, and so on, and potential building in the future. So all this resolution does is establish that. We get back on the OFCC waiting list and then move from there. Any questions about that?
How long were we on the list last time before our number was, do you know?
I don't know how many years.
Yeah, it was probably years. I don't know that exact number.
I want to say 6 or 7 years.
My
So-
former district, it was 7 years.
Yeah, and this is, this is not a resolution to confirm or move in any one direction. It's just to get that conversation going again, so we can do some horizon planning in the district. So the recommendation to approve the resolution to authorize the superintendent and treasurer to apply to the Ohio Facilities Commission, Construction Commission Classroom Facilities Assistant Program segment for the purposes of establishing a position for future funding.
Thank you. You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Delaney in a second?
Second.
Mr. Rudy. Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved.
And then item 8.03, if Mr. Romano will put up the list, what I want to do tonight is to announce to you the names of the people who have been, who've applied for the Citizens Advisory Commission and who we are going to ask to be on this team once we get your approval. This is a exciting list for us because there were 66 applicants who raised their hand to sign up for this opportunity, which I think it was great engagement and very encouraging to me. We worked really hard, especially in following the bylaws, because both Jim and Michelle and I worked together to make sure that we had parents on the list, not only parents that are working parents, but also parents that maybe are working from home. We have somebody who's just a community member who doesn't have children in the school system anymore. Staff that represents the classified staff, elementary, middle school, high school. And we looked at different professions that would bring different talents to the table. So whether that's research skills, evidence of owning businesses and being systems thinkers and really kind of understanding the community. We have people that have been in the community for a long time and people that are new to the community. So we worked really hard because we would have loved to have all 66, honestly. Like, we were just thrilled. of that level of engagement. And so we've settled on this list and would love, the idea for the CAC is that it would go for 2 years with this membership. And then people would, come off. And so I would hope that any of those 66 who maybe didn't get on this time, not be discouraged and think that they were not qualified or somebody that we want to see, because they absolutely were. We were just looking for a certain kind of balance of all, as much diversity and experience that we could bring to this first topic. So inside of the board notes, you'll also see we created a project leadership statement that kind of highlights why it's important that we look at the middle school students. And you can see in our data, and when you study just needs of young adolescents, that they experience unique challenges. The middle school is not meant to be like a miniature high school. And it is meant to be designed to academically challenge those students, to be developmentally responsive to their needs and socially equitable. And there's a lot of challenges working against our middle school when it's as large as it is. Teaming is certainly a huge factor that we employ to try to make the large school feel smaller. But when you have that many adolescents under one roof, you're going to experience some challenges. And as you all know, we've had staff turnover in that building, and it's a grueling schedule that begins at 7 a.m. and finishes at 2:15 with athletic events, et cetera, starting after 4 o'clock and beyond. And so there are some challenges there that we want to take a look at so that we can position students to academically be successful, socially be successful, and behaviorally be successful. And so this project plan in here is meant for us to dig in, and I won't read all the details, but we just want to share that in the scope of the work that we will be studying the current schedule and how it impacts. We'll be looking at adolescent mental and physical needs. And once we would look at a possible change, what that ripple effect might be, what the schedule changes could impact from the high school start time to elementary start time, how it impacts transportation, athletics, and extracurricular programming, what it does to our staffing and our substitute fill rates. Like right now, we don't know, do we have extra challenges at the middle school because of the start time at 7 that keep, subs from being able to sign up for that? What the financial impact is, what childcare could look like, as well as traffic on that road. If we change any kinds of, any variable, how does that affect that road? How does it affect what happens at the high school? And so it's a very meaty, complicated topic that we're going to dig into. So we're just thankful that these people have raised their hand and that they're interested in investing around the table with us. And it'll be a very in-depth process. And what you'll see is a certain amount of names on the table now, but we do plan to be bringing in different experts along the way. So we'll bringing in the athletic director as an example, or bringing in members of transportation. Like we'll keep infusing experts from in-house into into the process, and bring anybody from the outside that we might need, so that it's very like research developed. And if we need to, we'll be getting perception data from staff, students, as well as families along the way. So tonight I'm asking that you approve the Citizens Advisory Commission members and the research assignment of middle school start times.
Thank you. You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. I'll put that on the floor in the form of a motion and ask for a second.
Second.
Mr. Chumley, discussion?
So, of these 13 members, do we have alternates? Like if someone might need to, they
No.
volunteered?
We didn't officially bring alternates to you tonight. What we will have to do, if for whatever reason they can't commit, or the schedule that we have isn't going to work, then we'll go back into the pile, because we do have some names that certainly certain people had the same maybe profile or whatever. And so we'll bring new names to you. And that, I'm so glad you said that, because I actually forgot something very important here, and that is when we asked for applicants, we didn't get anybody from the high school interested. No one applied. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of reach out and see, because as part of our bylaws, we said we want to have somebody who works in the district at the elementary, middle, and high school, and who lives in the district. So we're looking for a certain person who's committed. So I will revisit that, and as we pick up new members, I'll bring those names back to you.
Excellent, thank you.
Anything further? Roll call?
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved.
And just for a few comments here, from me, I wanted to let you know that, I was on a call today with the National Association of Superintendents, and with, probably 10 or 12 different states represented, and we were in a focus group being asked about the experience at our schools, and it was very fascinating to me. We ended up with a list of 12 different issues that were being faced by school districts at this time. And it doesn't matter what state you're in. It doesn't matter what part of the country you're from. Every school district is experiencing this same thing. And so we were trying to put words to what is this? Because you're looking at just some distrust in the system. You're looking at people who have Zoom fatigue or just hours that are added to the day because we're connected to our computers so much. You look at how safety has become a topic that is politicized. And you look at the challenge of transforming teaching and learning, trying to keep the main thing, with this revolving door of quarantine and isolation that people are not happy about. And the list kind of goes on and on and on. And what I want to continue to share with you guys is that despite all those challenges, that we really can't ignore, because it's the trauma of people that ends up being what we're faced with every day. It's the social, emotional. It's everyone's just tired. I don't remember the data exactly on here, so I'm going to misspeak it. But it was fascinating to say, in the airline industry, there used to be hundreds of people that were on the no-fly ban list because of bad behavior, and in the last year, it's jumped to 5,000, something like that, where people's fuses are short, and they're tired, and they're finished. And so, of course, our children are in that same boat. They're living with the impacts of whatever's going on in their home life, and then whatever's staring them in the face in their classrooms, and just the challenges of school. And so as much as we are trying to carry on and be normal, nothing about this is normal. And the superintendents on the call today, everyone said, you could see everyone shaking their heads, that if you would have told me that this school year was going to be 10 times harder than the last two, I would never believe you. And that is absolutely the truth. And that's what I'm finding as I go around. I've been, as I said, doing the superintendent articulation meetings, and one elementary teacher used this. She's like, it's like we were on this roller coaster ride, and we were coming into the terminal, and because that's how we were feeling in the spring. We were coming in, we're going to get off this ride, and we're going to start to have some sense of peace, or whatever you want to call it. And instead of getting out, getting the bar off our lap and getting out, it was whoo, taking us off again and in the corkscrews, upside down. And that toll that it's taking us, I'm not here sharing all this with you to whine about it or to make you feel sorry for us, but just to let you know that it's last week, September 22nd, and staff are staring at me saying, Natasha, this is not sustainable. How do we keep doing this? And so we are balancing challenges of mental health in staff, mental health in students. We're balancing the playing who's on first, and we're balancing a public that is losing trust in us, losing faith in us, whether they are doing it on purpose or not. It's creating this just sense of us, them, which we've worked so hard to minimize. And I don't feel personally attacked. I don't feel like West Clermont School District is personally attacked. It's what's happening in every school district all around. And what I want to share with you today is our efforts in West Clermont to keep teaching and learning the main thing. So I'm going to share a couple items. One is, as an administrative team, we are going through a leadership experience, and we are kind of doubling down on building our own mindsets, tool sets, and skill sets to be better leaders. Because we think building capacity in each of us to lead through these chaotic times is job number one. And so we are investing in that as a school system, and I think it will play great benefits. Every week as a leadership team, we are doing walkthrough Wednesdays. And what that ends up being is an experience where we're dividing and conquering. Some of us are in the secondary building, some of us are in 2 different elementaries. And we're going in and putting our eyes in classrooms. We're with students, we're with teachers, and really looking at what does engagement look like in here? What does an all-in engaged teacher look like? What are their mindsets and skill sets, and like what talents do they bring to the table? And then what does an engaged student look like? So that we can put language to this and ensure over time that we're scaling stronger teaching, better learning by working together, all focused on the same things. We're also, you know, Jeffrey and I, we went out last week and we were just interviewing students to really understand, how was your experience? Now, we were very, I'm sure the middle school staff is still not happy with me because I interrupted lunch a bit. But the kids are telling us, like, they are so happy to be back at school. They are happy to be learning about social studies and being able to make art projects, and they're happy they're able to do plays and interact. Like, they're happy to be here. And what I'm trying to, like, as leaders, we're trying to balance, like, keeping that engagement going, keeping it strong, while we're balancing everything else. And I share those details with you just because it's probably, as much as we thought the past was hard, this is just more hard. This is just harder. I also want to share one other thing that's happening on a regular basis, just so you know where our efforts and our eggs are going, because that's where our energy is going, and that is Dan and I specifically working with partners. We met recently with our Chamber of Commerce president to continue to strengthen that relationship, to identify leaders in the community that we need to meet with regarding economic development or just new business opportunities and partnerships that we can make in our community. We met today with the Safety Alliance. You know, we're looking to build our whole child network supports so that if students need funding to get their laundry, or if they need access to hotspots or electricity, and all those things that seem to slow down students' ability to come to school and get that sense of belonging that they deserve, we're working on those partnerships. This week, on, I think it's Friday, the superintendents and the treasurers across the area, we're going to be working with Andrew McAfee from the Chamber of Commerce and meeting with all of the legislators to let them know the impacts of all the legislation that's out there and the decisions that they're making, how it absolutely impacts West Clermont staff and students, and what the future implications of that are. And so, again, I share these things to let you know we are working and fighting hard for our students, but it feels like everything is working against us in our efforts to do so. And so I just ask of you as a board to continue to thank you for how you show appreciation to our staff and to our administrators. That means so much. And that we just continue to look for ways to engage with our families and our community, so that we're all on the same side, we're all working toward the same goals, and not us them. Because you just feel the breakdown happening, and our kids are too important for us to be on opposite sides of what they need. And I know there's always going to be differences of opinions, but this is different. This is a wedge. This is a separation that's not healthy for any community or any school system. So we will continue to put our eggs in the basket of teaching and learning to make sure that our students have the best experience possible. And we certainly have work to do. We have bad habits that really got developed last year from students and staff and all of us that we are trying to course correct and get back on track. And it's difficult, and we're trying to do it without putting so much pressure in the system that you implode. And so it's a fine balance, and I just ask you to continue to keep informing me of like what you're hearing in the community, what you're seeing. You guys being visible at events has really made a difference. People know that you care about them, and that matters. And just hearing your praise for the administrators or the staff or whatever, it just goes a long way. So I just want to thank you for that, because right now that's the best I can think of that we need to keep the encouragement going and to keep us positively moving forward. Because as I said, with the numbers of quarantines that we have, with the numbers of illness that we've had, like it's just extremely challenging. So with that, I'll stop chattering and see, do you guys have any questions for me about anything in particular before we move on to board comments and reports?
Treasurer's business, I mean.
Oh, you have some things.
Yep, I was going to say we got.
I'm so used to it's being me and then going right to that, and I forgot that we moved you around in the agenda, so, sorry, Dan.
I think we can move on.
So with all these great things, we do have to find a way to have the authority to purchase them.
Yes.
Or rather, I think the theme, if there's a theme for this appropriation measure, Mr. LaFada, Mr. Overby, Mr. Parise kind of said it in their statements. Mrs. Preston said it a few weeks back with her team. Mr. Foltz said it, about the HR section. It really is investing in the people, the programs, the processes, our plant, the infrastructure that we have to do that. If you look at this appropriation measure, we're really investing $128.5 million into the students of our district. That's what we're really doing. I love the fact that every time a presentation was made, it talks about the investments in the onward and upward theme. That's where we want our students to go to, onward and upward with that, to do that. So this year's appropriation measure totals $128,501,000. The general fund is the bulk of that, $86.5 million. You'll note that that general fund number is less than last year. The main reason why it is less than last year is because the way the state is funding us now. They used to fund us at a level where they deducted funds for charter schools, community schools, for Ed Choice vouchers, and for open enrollment. The new formula funds the students that we educate. So you can even go back again and say the $86 million plus the other funds, we're investing $128 million into our students. That's where that is going with that.
Before you go on to that next slide.
Yep.
Could you give us just a little bit of a debriefing, because we usually talk about our appropriations being in the 79 to 81 or 82 million dollars, and how that number, which we consistently report, now looks like 128.
Yeah, because 128 is all funds.
Correct.
So it is our general fund. It is a series of special revenue funds. Revenue funds are the grants that we get from both the state and the federal. The debt service fund is basically making our annual principal and interest payments for building the new high school, for all the other buildings as part of the OFCC that we do. The capital project funds are some of the projects that Mr. LaFada talked about this evening, the roof repair that goes on periodically. There, it was great for me to hear that he's putting a schedule together, a 3 to 5 year schedule, what we need to do to our buildings and our infrastructure and our sites with that. So that's included in there. There are proprietary funds such as our food service funds and fiduciary funds. For example, fiduciary are really for student activities, the student managed ones, where they're collecting the money, but we're doing the accounting for them in different funds. So sum total, that equals $128 million. If we just go and look at the general fund, that's the $86.5 million, I think, that you're referring to do that.
And then
But
how's that 128 million compared to previous years? Is that about what we've spent in previous years?
Is it about what we spent, except it's about $6 million less because of the enrollment numbers, okay, that we're paying for. Plus, it's a little bit more because of the ESSER funds. So
Kind of balance each other out?
it kind of balances out, probably about $3 million less with that. It is less than in prior years doing that. And I don't have a comparison to the previous years. I can put that together and show you, what that really means with that. One of the things that we do just kind of as a responsibility is there is some oversight on our spending, not just from the board, but with the county budget commission. So prior to doing an appropriation measure, we have to file with the county budget commission our estimate of the resources that we believe we were going to receive. That whole process started in the beginning of the year, back in, I believe it was in March or April, when we got the tax rates from the county auditor. Okay, they're certifying to us how much tax money that we are going to be receiving for that, to do that. So you'll see in this chart that all of our appropriations that we're requesting are less than or equal to the estimated resources that the county budget commission had approved for us with that. So as you had mentioned, there's the general operating funds, which is the $86 to $90 million that traditionally we have, and there's a series of other funds that we have account for. The food services in a separate fund that we account for. So those do total up to the $128 million. that we're requesting. If we just look, if we look at how that's split up, that $86 million is about 67% of that total budget. The next largest is the state, or excuse me, is the special revenue funds, which is the federal and state grants that we receive, about 1.5%, 1.4% in retiring debt. The capital funds are about 6.3%, so those are the infrastructure projects. Proprietary funds, less than 0.5%, and then the fiduciary funds, about 13%, okay? The fiduciary funds are a little bit of a misnomer because there is a kind of a flow-through account that we use for our benefits. So we run that through an account, but it's just really an in and out with that as we do that. If we look at our general fund, okay, I said 86, but if we back off the carryover appropriations from last year, because we have encumbrances, orders that are out there, purchase orders that are out there that aren't paid, those carryover encumbrances are about $2 million. If we look how that's divided up this year into the different components, our salaries are about 67, in the general fund. Our salaries are the 53.2% that you see. The benefits are 23.3%. Those two components are people, salaries and benefits that we do it. You'll see that that's higher than previous years. The main reason that's higher is there's two reasons why. One is when you take $6 million out of another component, even if the salaries didn't change, it would be a higher percentage, right, to do that. But also, if you recall, we made investments in the upward and onward to add additional staff to the general fund, okay? That staff, if we go back to that April time period when that whole program was put together, we only added staff in the general fund equal to the amount of funding that we knew was going to continue on. Okay, so it was about $3 million additional funding that we had from the valuation, the property tax increase, okay? So we didn't use all of that money, but a portion of that money, you know, we used to add additional staff that was highly needed, that had already been identified in the past, that when we had funds, we could use that with. Purchase services, that is the area that went down. If you recall, tuition, whether it was open enrollment, community schools, and or the Ed Choice vouchers, that was about the $6 million that was reduced out of purchase services, so that percentage of the pie did go down, okay? So those numbers are going to change if we look at comparisons from prior years, or if we look at comparisons to other school districts. You know, those numbers will be a little bit different than we had in the past to do that. If we look at salaries specifically, the 53% is about $44.3 million. That represents the increase from the negotiated agreements, both in the percent on the base, experience steps, and as they gain education increases, take courses, move from a bachelor's to a master's, there's an increase there. It also includes the student wellness dollars that were previously reported as a special revenue fund. Part of House Bill 110 took that funding and rolled it into the state funding to the general fund. So we got the same amount of money, but rather than accounting for it in a special revenue fund or a separate fund, it's now included in the general fund with that. So right off the bat, the general fund, although we reduced it by $6 million, we increased it by $1 million, which really came from another fund. No change to the district in total.
And clarification of that number, it's 700,000.
So 700,000 in salaries, and then you'll see on the next slide there is about 300 and.
I'm talking about the student wellness.
The student wellness, it was the total in the fund last year was $1,067,000, and that was primarily wages and benefits. So 700,000 in wages, and another 400,000 in benefits. You'll see on the next slide with that to do that. And we did have additional staff. If you notice, there's an FTE report that we provide every month. You'll see that sum total within the district, I believe it was 27 and a half FTEs that we increased from last year. That's divided up into the general fund and then to the other funds, primarily the ESSER funds was the increase. Benefits 23.3%. That's the retirement, Medicare, that's all the insurances, the dental, the drug, the life insurance. As discussed earlier, our health insurance went up goes up 1.2% in January. So the increase in the 23.3%, okay, is due to the additional staff, number one, and then our health insurance rates are calendar, and this past year the rate went up 5.4%. So kind of a misnomer when I say it's 1.2 because it's really a blending of that to do that. And then also the additional staff, there were benefits that came along with that. Purchase services, primarily transportation and utilities, professional services to the ESC, where we purchased some special ed services with that. There is tuition of $1.3 million that is built into that. That is that's tuition where students come to us or districts contract to have us serve their children to do that. Again, what's not included is roughly $6 million in enrollment. That's there. More. So the other areas, supplies and materials, and then the capital outlay, the dollar amount remained pretty much the same. It's about 1.8% of their budget in supplies and materials, and then in the capital outlay, about $1.25 million. You'll see spread across these funds, and I think, as the superintendent said, our focus is on teaching and learning. One of the things that I think we're extremely excited about is that the curriculum adoption cycle. So this year, the focus on math and getting the new curriculum for math comes into play. That's kind of spread across all of these areas when we look at that, but we're excited that that is coming forward in this budget. And I keep going the wrong way here. Oop. I don't know how I lost it, but let's get back. I think I ended if I hit that last slide. We'll do it this way. So, let me go back up here a little bit. So what comes next after we approve this appropriation measure? So if you look at the next major approval or request for approval, that will do with the board, that's the 5-year forecast. That comes in November. Between now and then, what we're putting together is, school districts go by an annual budget. It would be great if we're like the state and could have a 2-year budget or a 3-year budget, but we do an annual budget. So one of the things that we want to put together that's a little bit more detailed than the 5-year forecast is a spending plan. So we're looking at taking each of our funds, primarily the general fund, but start playing out in a little bit more detail, what does that look like in salaries and benefits on a line item? So for FY '23, '24, and '25. That then should roll up to our 5-year forecast. So it's really taking what is summary in the 5-year forecast, but doing the detail behind it so that we can roll that up. That's what we're planning on working on the next couple of months to do that. We want to continue to monitor the budget that we have. One of the things that Dr. Fultz and I and others have talked about as we look forward with the ESSER funds having a sunset to them in FY '24, we know that there's additional staff that was hired. Some of that staff is in the ESSER funds, but what we need to concentrate on are the positions. And so as there is turnover, as there is attrition, how do we make sure that we are capturing those and doing the right placeholders for those over the next 2-3 years as those funds sunset to do that. So that is the total of the appropriation measure. So the request that I have is on item number 9.01 is a recommendation to approve the annual appropriation measure for the fiscal year ending in June 30th, 2022.
You've heard the recommendation of the treasurer. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Schaaf. And a second?
Second.
Mrs. Delaney.
Thank you.
Discussion? No? Roll call.
All right, Mr. Schaaf.
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney.
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Yes,
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
5 yes.
motion approved.
Thank you. And my comments, I'll let the appropriation measure discussion serve as those comments.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, and we're gonna wrap this up pretty quickly probably. Board Business Culture Committee, I'm the chair. We have our committee meeting scheduled for October 4th. We've not met since. Educational Committee?
We have
Mr.
a meeting
Rudy.
coming up also.
Okay. Family and Community Engagement? Mr. Rudy?
Meeting coming up.
Okay. Finance and Advocacy? Mr. Schaaf?
We met last week. We discussed most of what we just was presented here tonight.
Okay. Operations Committee?
We have a meeting in October coming up.
Okay. Policy Committee?
Same October, I believe.
Board comments?
Yeah. I'm always happy when we start our meetings with recognition, awards for recognition. Especially since I feel like we've had just like a strong business face on for so long now. It's good to have some positivity going into a meeting. So congratulations to those who were recognized this morning. And I'm glad the Bengals were all business on Sundays.
I knew you was gonna say that.
Your Reds not so much.
Hey, they won
I'm trying
13-1
to
today.
forget about that, so
Yeah, well.
that's it for me.
Mrs. Delaney?
Ditto to what Mr. Chumley said. It's great having people back here in the boardroom with us, and especially the students, you know, achieving such high goals. We're really proud of what they do and the leadership behind them to empower them to do those things. It's also very encouraging, all the news that Mr. Priest shared tonight about cybersecurity. I work along with Mrs. Brinkman. We both work in a healthcare world where cybersecurity is off the chart. You know, we're always, and now, you know, these crazy people are moving on to schools, unfortunately. So it's great to see that we are moving ahead of the curve and going to be trendsetters in that. And our new CAC committee, it's very exciting to be a part of that. It was a hard, you know, it was a hard decision. We had a lot of really exciting candidates to review, and a lot of people to bring value to our discussion. So it's going to be really exciting to meet with those people and develop that relationship to service our children better. And that's it.
Mr. Schaaf?
I want to thank Mike, Chuck, Larry, and all your staff, and the excellent job that you do, Natasha and Dan as well. I don't know, the camera's usually on us, so the people watching at home probably can't see who's here. And I don't know if there's a way, we can't see, we're not seeing the video, but if there's a way to show who's in the audience now. But the majority of our principals and administrators are here tonight. And now, whether they were voluntold to be here or whether they're here of their own volition, you know, their own free will, but I know Natasha had mentioned about how they appreciate our support. I want to say, at least for myself, and I hope I'm speaking for everyone, that we appreciate their support, being here, taking the extra time out of their day, because they probably started their day at 7 o'clock this morning, and we're at 9:20 p.m., and they'll go home, go to bed, get up and start their day again at 7 a.m. So I want to appreciate, let you guys know, appreciate that you're here to understand this side of the business of running a school district, so we appreciate that. I also want to thank Mr. McGraw, who is no longer in attendance, but I appreciate our partnership with Union Township, and for him taking the time out of his schedule to be here and give us an update. I kind of wish, that other townships that are involved would do the same thing. Now, it's a double-edged sword. I haven't spent any time reaching out to them, so, I can't, fault anyone for not doing that, but I hope in the future that can be rectified. And then, Mrs. Ellis is here. I think she's part of our community advisory committee, and appreciate you showing up. And then with our Healthplex, getting a report on that, it's nice to hear how that side of things, especially when the high school, that was a big selling point with the new high school, and it's great to hear an update about that. I would have one request for Natasha is that, and I'm not saying that this be on next meeting, but maybe we can find out what's going on with the health source at the middle school and get an update on that. How are things going with the dental, and how, especially with pandemic, how are we, how's health source and the clinic operating?
Okay, we'll do that.
So, and then other than that, I voiced my concerns and my opinions earlier, so I won't reiterate that as far as masking and quarantine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Rudy?
I'm not gonna say much because I know you guys are all as tired as I am, and it's about an hour past my bedtime. So I'll keep my mouth shut for once. But thank you.
Well, Mr. Schaff stole my thunder, but I will acknowledge that many of you come to work well before 7 a.m., so thank you for being here and joining us, as well as our community members that took time out of their evening to join us as well. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mr. Rudy?
Second.
Mr. Chumley? Roll call?
I'm sorry, Mr. Rudy and Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Yes.
I bet that's going to be the second. All right, Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you.